Elementary Feeder School Grant. This came before CNI March 13th for approval.
This came before CNI March 13th and was moved forward enthusiastically for approval.
Approval of this item would authorize the superintendent to accept the Satterberg Foundation Elementary Feeder School Grant funds in the amount of $950,000. Do I hear a motion?
I move that the board authorize the superintendent to accept the Satterberg Foundation Elementary Feeder School Grant funds in the amount of $950,000.
I second the motion.
Questions, comments, concerns from my colleagues? Double dog dare ya. Or say thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you in harmony.
1, 2, 3. Thank you. Director Mack, please. Nope. Director DeWolf? Roll call, please.
Director Geary?
Aye.
Director Mack?
Aye.
Director Patu?
Aye.
Director Pinkham?
Aye.
Director Berg?
Aye.
Director DeWolf?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
This motion is passed unanimously.
Thank you so much. Number 3, Seattle Teacher Residency Program funding. This came before Executive Committee March 15th for approval. Approval of this item would provide authority for the superintendent to dedicate $251,000 for the purposes of the Seattle Teacher Residency, STR, program in the 2018-19 school year. Do I hear a motion?
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to dedicate $251,000 in the 2018-19 school year budget for the purpose of the Seattle Teacher Residency Program.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Before we go to questions, comments, and concerns, Ms. Broom, could you stand and be acknowledged, please, for your work on this with the Alliance for Education? Thank you so much. We asked our other partners to stand previously. Director DeWolf?
Thank you, Director Harris. I just wanted to say a special thank you to Alliance for Education and the Seattle Education Association, our folks here at SPS, and UW. Thank you. I know there's 4. Just really grateful for your work and service around making sure that we have a pipeline of teachers of color in our schools. We not only heard that question last week to the public during the public forum, but that question was in pretty much every conversation we had with our future superintendent. So I know that all of our candidates, and particularly the one we elevated earlier tonight, are interested in this issue, and I'm so grateful for the work that you do. In a perfect world, our state would fully fund us and we could support you with more money, but thank you for letting us give you what we can, and thank you for making sure we have teachers of color that look like the students in our schools. Thank you.
Director Geary, please.
I second, of course, the comments of Director DeWolf, and there's another aspect about it that I think is so fantastic, and we can't even monetize it. But as we create this pipeline, those teachers just bring that enthusiasm, that the new ideas that they've been exposed to out in their studies. And I can only imagine that it just reinvigorates the whole educational environment around the students with a lens of really appreciating that every single student is somebody who can learn and deserves that kind of passion. So I love this program. I've always loved this program. I wish we could have it everywhere, and we'll continue to work for that. Thank you.
Dr. Clover Codd, the Assistant Superintendent for HR, if you would like to make a few quick comments, we'd be grateful. Thank you.
I had not planned on making any comments, except for I am deeply grateful to all of you for your support, and to the Alliance for Education, the Seattle Education Association, and the University of Washington for their continued partnership and perseverance over the last several years to make sure that this is a viable program. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns before roll call? Short and sweet, thank you very much. Director Burke, please.
I just want it to be known that as part of the discussion around this, this is a funding leverage strategy, and it's an expensive program, but it's an investment into our future educators and therefore our future students and our system that is making impacts in ways that we can't do without very focused work. And so this contribution will be basically 25% of the operating budget for this program. And some of the concerns that have been raised both on and off the board is it sustainable? How do we maintain that? And I think the work of our partners at the Alliance for Education and the enthusiasm around this program help sustain that. But we recognize that there will be an ongoing cost as part of the future structure of this moving forward. We're trying to put in place a sustainable model where Seattle Public Schools covers 1/3 of the ongoing cost, with 2/3 being covered through philanthropy and grant funding. So there is a commitment from the board, from the district level, to continue to invest in this, along with the understanding that that investment is shared and supported by the rest of the community. So I want that loud and proud.
Roll call, please.
Director Patu,
Aye.
Director Pinkham,
Aye.
Director Burke,
Aye.
Director DeWolf,
Aye.
Director Geary,
Aye.
Director Mack,
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Next up, number 4, approval of Information Technology Advisory Committee. This came before the Executive Committee March 15th for consideration. Approval of this item would authorize and approve the charge of the Information Technology Advisory Committee. May I hear the motion, please? Fired.
I move that the school board authorize and approve the charge of the Information Technology Advisory Committee with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent.
I second the motion.
Director Burke, would you speak to this motion, please?
I would love to share with my colleagues, and I'll let John Kroll fill in the details. This has been a long-term goal, need, has been mentioned multiple times by folks on the board, has been a passion of President Harris and of myself, and I've heard it from some of you as well, that how do we engage our community in this high-tech and amazing city in informing us and helping us be better about the tech we're doing. We ask our voters for a significant amount of money, and we're grateful for their support through levies. And we have a component of funding that comes from the BTA levy, Buildings, Technology, and Academics, and a funding of our tech that comes from the BEX, the Building Excellence, because we infuse technology in all of our buildings. And how we shape that request to the community of what work we're doing, how we set our budgetary guidelines, and then how we implement that so that it's prioritized according to our strategic goals, our equity lens, all the things that we talk about, putting that amount of money into practice to really benefit students. It's pretty multifaceted, and it's hard, it's nuanced for us as a board to make decisions on, $1 million here, $1 million there. Technology can really rack up quickly. So having a committee that's made up of community, students, industry experts, staff, across multiple staffing categories is a great way to sort of extend our reach as a board, and that's why this is a board committee. So that's really the intent behind it. Between when it came through executive committee and then was introduced and now is coming to you for action, there were comments that came up and feedback from folks in the community but also we got some really great dialogue with Director Harris, President Harris, and captured, hopefully, a lot of that, and to the point where Director Harris and I are now co-sponsoring this. Tip of the hat. So I'm really excited. I think a lot of the things that came up were great improvements in transparency and ways to build the committee to be strong, sustainable, and effective. And so the document that's attached to the board agenda, I apologize, it's a little bit kind of red line madness, but the resulting bar and charge, I believe, is a much more solid thing than what we brought forward 4 weeks ago.
2 weeks.
Was it 2 weeks? 2 weeks. Time flies.
When you're having fun.
Yeah. So, John Kroll, I don't know if you have anything else to add or if you want to go to questions. I defer to you.
And we need to keep it short because we still have a number of agenda items to discuss this evening.
Yes, thank you, Director Burke and Director Harris. I was disappointed when the press left because I thought they were here for the Technology Advisory Committee.
You ready for your close-up, are you, Mr. DeMille?
I just wanted to emphasize that we moved the start of the committee to the third week in May to allow for more engagement to reach a diverse and underserved, historically underserved group the best that we can in getting a large group of people to apply. And I think another improvement was we've added a second student, so there's room on the board for 2 student voices.
On the committee, not the board.
Or committee, yep.
Not so fast.
So with that, I will let board members speak.
Comments, questions, concerns? Director Mack.
If you could briefly explain the structure of, the general structure of the advisory committee, how those folks are going to be selected and who they report to. And I'm fully in support because this is definitely a need.
I'll give it a try, and John, you'll get my back, so just shake your head if I get it wrong.
And I'll hurt you.
18 members, 8 community, 8 staff, 2 students. The goal, all of them are selected by application. The applications are reviewed using a rubric that's developed jointly with the executive committee, Deputy Superintendent Nielsen, and CIO John Kroll. Will be developing the rubric, scoring the applicants, and determining the final selections. The operation of the committee, John Kroll serves as ex officio co-chair, and then a second co-chair is selected from the committee members, and it rotates year to year, whether it's from the community or the staff. So we have shared representation, sort of a shared leadership structure as well. And John kind of gluing it all together and making sure that everybody plays well.
And the agendas and the minutes of said committee will be posted on the website. The meetings will in fact be open. They will be at a determined time, same time every month. Initially here at the John Stanford Center, but does not mean that they can't meet elsewhere, and all of that will be posted and shared.
And the meetings will begin with a budget component, much like the BEX oversight, where we say, here's the projects we're working on, here's the budgets for them, here's our progress. Quick summary of that, just so we have full transparency into the projects. It will also be used as a sounding board for key technology initiatives, not all of them necessarily, but the ones that are that merit review by the advisory committee will come to the committee, be discussed and debated, and then the guidance from that would be included in BARS as part of the community and equity components. The committee will be trained using the community engagement tool and our equity framework as well.
Director Patu, please, and then Director Geary.
Just curious, how are students actually chosen to be on this committee?
that still has yet to be developed by the Executive Committee, Deputy Nielsen, and CIO Kroll. Also, we will stagger 1 to 2 year terms by drawing lots when the committee first meets, so that you will have best practices in the nonprofit world. So you will have some carryover, so we don't start over and flip the whole thing. And people are eligible to serve multiple terms. Director Geary, please.
As I recall, when this came up before, I did mention that I had done a search and didn't see anything discussing assistive technology. I do see that there is now, there is talking about different characteristics that will be considered along with subject matter and specific topic expertise, paren ed tech, data privacy, enterprise business systems, online blended learning, etc. I think assistive technology is very specialized, and it needs to be blended into the general education environment in a way that is planned and seamless and supports students' progress in general education. And so I'm not seeing how this committee is going to have somebody who has the expertise necessary to do that kind of critical analysis of the work that the task force is doing to provide meaningful input. So I'm disappointed in that.
Director Burke?
Just to highlight, on page 6, there's a list of key projects for possible consideration by the committee include but are not limited to. The third one down on the list is adaptive technology and accessibility for our differently abled students and community. So I think that there was definitely awareness around that as an important element, and I believe it's also built into the sort of the qualifications or what we're looking for in terms of applicants.
And I
So-
would suggest that you, as a member of the executive committee that will be helping develop the rubric and choosing folks, potentially we could give extra points and certainly double down on those concerns.
I am just concerned that if we don't specifically call out the type of people that we are looking for, there is such a historic division between that which is considered the normal business of the district and that which is relegated to special ed, that people who are in assistive technology won't really fully understand that their expertise is wanted. That is just the result, the unfortunate result of historical marginalization around that work. So I don't.
Director Burke?
I think that it's important to acknowledge that was one of the comments that motivated the shift of the start date, which originally had been proposed as the third Monday in April and is now the third Monday in May. And so once should this bar be approved, the community engagement team will immediately begin to do outreach along with us as directors to engage folks that bring those extra perspectives that perhaps haven't been in the past. And so there's I believe, a little bit more than 4 weeks. May 11th, I think, is the due date for applicants. So a fairly decent amount of time. It'll go by quickly, but I just wanted to, that's why I tell everyone you know.
And there is nothing that would prevent us from adding an amendment, one sentence for a emphasis. Director Geary, if you so choose, we could move on to the next board action issue if you'd like to determine an amendment. We could circle back to this. I respect your comments greatly, and if there's a way we can incorporate those comments or the substance of what you're looking for, I'd be more than happy to move the agenda along and circle back.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Number 5, amending board policy number 1410, executive or closed sessions, and board procedure number 1430, BP, audience participation. This came before the executive committee March 15th for consideration. Approval of this item would amend board policy number 1410, executive or closed sessions, and the board procedure number 1430, BP, audience participation. May I hear the motion, please?
I move that the board amend policy number 1410, executive or closed sessions, and board procedure number 1430 BP, audience participation, as attached to this board action report.
I second the motion.
Questions, comments, concerns from my colleagues? Director Mack.
We heard from a community member about the concern that public testimony on the consent agenda is difficult because of the timing of our agenda, that the consent agenda happens before a public comment. And it is action, so consent agenda is an action item, but they don't technically have the ability to speak to it before action is taken. And so I'm kind of curious about that, if there's a resolution to that challenge.
Director Burke and then Director DeWolf, please.
I want to thank Nate Van Duzer for there was an amendment, that's the change that has been made, speaking to action items on the agenda, including items on the consent agenda. So they will be prioritized first. And so now it's incumbent on us as a board to look at the audience participation and what those items are. And if we see people that have public testimony for items on the consent agenda, any of the 7 of us can request that that item be removed, and could move that it be shifted till after comments.
Director DeWolf, and then we'll circle back to Director Mack.
Thank you. And I was also just curious, given that our public comment does start at 5:30, if there's a reason timing-wise for folks, if they're coming from work or other parts of the city, that just with kind of the timing around traffic and all those things, that 5:30 is just where we've kind of put the public comment. If we did it at the beginning, before any of the consent, I would be concerned that people wouldn't be able to get here. So I'm just curious if it's more around kind of the balance between logistics and purpose.
Director Mack?
The timing of our public comment is, as I understand it, important so folks can get here. The concern I have around us being diligent to make sure that we flag it is, I don't think I want to leave that for us to accidentally miss. I'm sorry. I mean, we have so much information we're tracking. So just if it is on the consent agenda and someone is speaking to that, I think maybe it's an appropriate notation on the speaking list, and that gets called out, meaning they're listed, their topic, and then parens on consent agenda, so that it would be flagged for us. We wouldn't have to try to cross-reference.
Mr. Van Duzer, would you like to respond or give us your thoughts, please, sir?
Yes, good evening. Nate Van Duzer, Director of Policy and Board Relations. That was a thought that Director Burke had as well. My initial response to that is putting together the testimony list. There's a lot of different pieces to it, and adding one more, I was just hesitant to go there, in part because sometimes people's topic lists, we try to just take what they give us and put it on there without trying to interpret it too much or change the wording too much. So that was my initial reaction.
Director DeWolf.
Thank you for that. I wonder if instead of putting extra homework on our staff, if maybe the executive committee, and I'm not trying to give you more homework, but maybe if the executive committee, given that I think it's a good idea to help us kind of flag it, if maybe that's something the executive committee could kind of help flag for us. Maybe-
I'm agreeable to that. Director Pinkham?
Well, as you're saying that it's taking what the people that are going to do public comment are putting in there, can we then definitely be more specific to them and say, if you are going to address something on the consent agenda, please put that in your comments, so then be hopefully easier for you. Oh, there's a consent agenda item that someone said they're going to address because they said, I want to address a consent agenda item. So that, again, it doesn't put too much on your plate again. If you're just going to kind of copy and put it in there, then I think that'll help us at the board be able to, oh, there's a consent agenda item that someone wants to talk to. Would that be something that may help out?
We could think about where those instructions are and figure out if there's a place to put that in. One thing that I did want to note, the concern that was raised in the case that was raised in the email, in that case, the item was caught by directors and was pulled off the consent agenda, and I believe moved to later in the evening. And so I think part of me is hesitant to put in a lot of new structures or systems in place when I'm not sure there's a I think we caught it in that case, and I don't know how many cases there are in which we're not catching.
Okay, and as most dynamic organizations go, if we need to make further changes, there is nothing that stops us from doing that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Van Duzer?
That's correct. And I'm happy when the public testimony list comes in as directors are coming in at the beginning of the meeting, if I see something on there that looks like a consent item, I'm happy to flag that as well.
And I would suggest to the very good folks at the walls that you give us the heads up as well, because we're a team. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Director DeWolf?
Aye.
Director Geary? Director Mack?
Aye.
Director Patu?
Aye.
Director Pinkham?
Aye.
Director Burke?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Director Geary, are you ready, or should we continue the agenda and circle back? Or do you want to flag it when you are ready?
I think I'm ready.
Okay, go for it, please.
So we are
And
back.
General Counsel is coming to the box.
So we're back.
Thank you.
We have a motion for item number 4.
Yeah, I was just going to, Noel Treat, General Counsel, I was just going to suggest that since you made the motion on the Oversight Committee and then you jumped into a different motion, which you made and voted on, to properly put a motion on the floor, you had to go back to the original, remake the motion on the Oversight, or on the Technology Committee, and then go from there to the amendment.
Happy to do so. Giving space to our respected colleagues is tricky.
Do I need to withdraw it before I reissue it? Okay. I move that the school board authorize and approve the charge of the Information Technology Advisory Committee with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent.
I second the motion.
Do I hear an amendment to the motion?
I move to amend the Information Technology Advisory Committee charge referenced in the bar to add the following language to Section 3 and what I believe to be Paragraph 5, which commences the Deputy Superintendent, Chief Information Officer, and Board, and goes on from there. But I'm only adding to the very end of that paragraph that talks about the different kinds of people that will be considered for the committee, the following sentence. Specialized knowledge of assistive technology will also be considered.
I second that amendment motion. Comments, questions, concerns from my colleagues? And Chief Jesse, are you good with this? 2 thumbs up or 1 thumb up? Thank you. Director Mack? Nope. Roll call, please, on the amendment.
Director Burke?
Aye.
Director DeWolf?
Aye.
Director Geary?
Aye.
Director Mack?
Aye.
Director Patu?
Aye.
Director Pinkham?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
This amendment has passed unanimously.
Roll call, please, on the motion as amended.
Director Burke?
Aye.
Director DeWolf?
Aye.
Director Geary?
Aye.
Director Mack?
Aye.
Director Patu?
Aye.
Director Pinkham?
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
This motion as amended has passed unanimously.
Thanks very much. Next up, number 6, termination of ground lease at the Lake City School. This came before Ops on March 8th for
Consideration.
approval of this item would approve early termination of the lease with Lake City Professional Building, LLC, in the payment amount of $6,193,000 for the Lake City School to provide for increased flexibility to meet capacity needs of Seattle Public Schools. Motion, please.
Take a deep breath. I move that the school board approve the lease termination agreement for the Lake City School property as attached to this board action report with any minor modifications, additions, or deletions deemed necessary by the superintendent, and authorize the superintendent to take all actions necessary, including payment of a $6,193,000 lease termination payment to implement the agreement.
Second.
I second the motion.
Questions, comments, concerns from my colleagues? Director Mack.
I don't have, Bruce, if you don't mind. I don't have my notes from the meeting 2 weeks ago, but I know I had a series of questions, and I thought that we were going to include additional information in the bar. Was there, I'm trying to track back if this bar actually got edited and that information included.
I don't believe the bar was modified. There was some additional information that was sent to the board in I believe it was a Friday memo. There was a question about the drain issue at the property, and then a copy of the appraisal was sent out.
Yeah, I do recall seeing those in my email. I was having a hard time finding them for some reason, but I saw them come through. But they're not here to be as part of that. The other piece I remember wanting clearly laid out was the rate of payback or potential rate of payback that this would be. Maybe I did not make that request, but I think that was a question that we are potentially losing $7,000 a month in income from them and potentially making X and pay back this over the course of how much time. And
yeah, I think the analysis that was done was the payback was about 7.5 to 8 years, which figured the income of $66,000 a month.
So hearing that verbally is great. However, where I'm having a challenge is that that's not here in the public information for folks to see and to understand this transaction and the justification behind it. So I'm a little nervous about passing this without that information in the bar and available. I'm curious what other folks think, but this is our public documents of what transpires. And
Director Burke.
I do recall that conversation. My feeling is that since the bar does explicitly indicate that the total cost of the property is expected to be offset by leased revenue, blah, 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 within a 9 to 10 year period. So the payback is stated as a high level, but it doesn't actually state it as a revenue expense kind of annual. This is under Section 5 in the bar, fiscal impact. So I'm comfortable with that at a high level. I think having the information in the public record through the meeting is great.
Mr. General
okay with
Counsel, to the box, please. What are our options here? I appreciate that the meeting minutes and the public record and video create a record. Is there a appropriate way to add the documents that Director Mack rightly has concerns about to the record after the bar is passed? Oh, good, I gotcha.
I'm not thinking of a way. I mean, I think we can always add something, for instance, to our web pages or something like that to provide the public with information. But in terms of a way to add it to the actual legislative record when it wasn't actually presented and considered here, I'd maybe look to Nate and see if he's got an idea.
I'll just add one thing that we've done in the past is we've added a note to the agenda with a new link saying the board requested that this information also be available for review.
Okay.
Other questions, comments, concerns? Director Mack.
I'm curious to get the feel from the rest of my board directors about this large amount of funds being spent on this building. Are we comfortable with this at this point? What are our thoughts? Because we have a lot of building needs in the district. This isn't going to immediately become something we're actually going to be spending. 6 million? Is that the number? So
$6 million.
I'd like to hear perspectives and get a sense of, are we being responsible taxpayer dollars here?
Director Geary and then Director Burke. And then Director Pinkham.
From a very high level, it's the responsibility in my mind is to recognize, as we have talked about before, that in reducing class sizes, we're going to need more space one way or another. We're in a city that has not much open land, and that land is very, very expensive. The longer we wait, the more expensive land becomes. It seems to me that there's no way to see into the future what the exact cost of gaining flexibility around land and places to create classrooms is going to be. That's just going to be a mystery in terms of how the economy's doing, what the city wants to do with housing, all these things. And so making sure that within the very limited scope that we have to control availability of classrooms, that we need to move in that direction. That is, and I believe that's sort of honoring work that I have heard you talk about over a long period of time. And without, there's going to be no cheap or smooth way to do this, because unfortunately land doesn't come up at ground zero of the circle of kids that we need to find new seats for. That's not how it's going to work. And then we know, even if it did, we'll have all the people going to the surrounding schools who don't want to go to that school anyway. So it seems to me maximizing our flexibility in the long run.
President Harris has tagged to me. Director Pinkham.
And I believe that we were offered to buy out this lease previously, and it was significantly less at that time. And then we just see this cost probably going up if we say no and then trying to buy it out at a later date. It would just be more expensive. Is that correct? Kind of a
potentially, yeah. And this is our once every 10-year opportunity to purchase the lease.
And then this may be a question also maybe for Flip with Operations. Again, in the statement that Director Burke was referring to, that the total cost of real property expected to be offset by lease revenue received directly by the SPS instead of the Lake City Professional within 9 to 10 year period, but then followed by SPS is not anticipating the need for this facility within the next 7 to 10 years. But how long, if we need it at that 7th year, do we need to go in and move tenants out, remodel it? Are we going to have to say, gee, we're going to need 2 years to do that? So we're actually maybe only collecting 5 years of revenue?
Yeah, Flip Herndon, Associate Superintendent, Operations and Facilities. Those are all very good questions. So what this allows us to do is, if we were in the position, we basically gain control of the building first and foremost. So the ability, we wouldn't have to buy the lease out from the main leaseholder anymore. We have it back. So we're gaining revenue. In that particular case, if we needed the building and had to turn it into educational space sooner than that, sooner than less than 10 years, let's say, Correct. We wouldn't be gaining the revenue, monthly revenue or annual revenue off of the subleases that we have in there. But we also don't have to pay for the purchase of buying out the rest of the lease or acquiring land anywhere else either. So we will have already purchased that and we have the options. Then we're just moving into whatever the renovation cost may be for the building. And we can stage that out. We can basically figure out, okay, we see this coming our way. We didn't see it a couple of years ago, but within the next 5 years, we believe we're going to need an additional building in that location. We can attach fiscal impact to what that might be. But in that time, so if we have a 10-year a 9 to 10 year payback period, basically on $690,000 a year, and we've done 5 years of that, then essentially we've bought down the amount to buy at that lease by half that cost.
Director Mack.
Thank you. So I want to formally make the request that those documents and that information be added to this if this does in fact pass tonight. But the second question I had for you, Dr. Herndon, was I noticed in the Webster documents that, so a different building, that we're also talking about tonight on a different action item, that Webster's not able to access the state school construction assistance program dollars because it was closed for so long. So then Lake City is going to be in the same situation.
Correct.
Correct. So there's the up to 20% or less that we don't get. I know we hardly get anything, and
Right.
that needs to be fixed. Yes, I know, but there's some dollars that come to us from the state. Webster's not able to do it because it was a surplus building. Lake City's a surplus building, so it won't get those dollars. If that site were completely raised and a brand new building built, does that change the story?
It's possible. There are a couple of different ways in which we qualify for school construction assistance program dollars. And as you know, we've been working with legislators to help change that qualification methodology anyway. So we would hope by the time that we have to have action on that particular site, we might have a different calculation for how we might be compensated more. Currently, it's definitely not 20%. We're lucky to get overall budget like in the single digits, 5%, 6%, and that's optimistic.
I just want to put that in our thoughts for legislative support to ensure that the designation that previously surplus buildings are no longer able to access those funds. To me, that I don't understand why that would be part of the calculation in the first place. But so that just wanted to make the point there. That's all I have. If no one else has any
Other questions, comments, concerns? Director Pinkham, please.
And then on the rent roll, there are 3 vacant offices right now. Would there be any intention to possibly rent those out in the short term to increase the revenue?
They've contacted us. I think they are planning on renting those out in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I see them from a size of 324 square feet up to 2,566 square feet for one of them.
Well, given the rents in South Lake Union and downtown Seattle, I would think that we could do well.
Yes.
Seeing no further comments, questions, concerns from my colleagues, roll call, please.
Director Geary?
Aye.
Director Mack?
Aye.
Director Patu?
Aye.
Director Pinkham?
Aye.
Director Burke?
Aye.
Director DeWolf?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
7, creation of playground redevelopment fund. This came before Ops, March 8th, 4. Approval of this item would request the funding of a playground redevelopment project to pay for playground installations and improvements in the amount of $1 million. May I have the motion, please?
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to create a playground redevelopment project fund of $1 million to be utilized for playground improvement projects as described in the board action report.
Second, please.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Questions, comments, concerns from my colleagues? Director Mack.
My one question is that this assumes that the $1 million will be paid back if BEX 5 passes. So do we have that already calculated on the list of potential BEX projects that's not accidentally forgotten about? I just want to make sure that we don't forget that that's part of the commitment we're making here.
We do. We have that. If you look on the menu of BEX 5 potential items, we haven't broken down every single playground that might be addressed, but we can certainly put a line item in the playground portion that says reimbursement to CEP fund for advancement of playground development fund. We can do that.
And again, remind me who reviews the grants or who is going to be approving the usage of these funds?
It would go through the operations committee, and it would be a self-help process.
Other comments, questions, concerns? Director Pinkham.
I guess for me, when we're looking at, we're still talking about the BEX 5 and what we're going to put on it. Do you think this is fair for us to say, here's $1 million that will go on it no matter what?
So I think in conversation about this, the CEP fund, which comes from capital dollars, that's what is really fronting this. So that money is available for the board to spend in this particular way. As we've had several conversations about previous BEX and capital levies, playgrounds have been on menus in the past and then not survived to the end to actually get on the ballot. We've heard pretty strong support from this particular board to have that happen. One of the mechanisms for at least knowing whether or not to continue to have that happen is an evaluation in the facility condition assessment to include condition of playgrounds. So I think once the public and board see some of the disparities that we have within our school buildings, I think there'll be pretty good support in order to continue to have that happen. But ultimately, it is a board decision about how big that levy needs to be and what needs to survive. We're just as staff going off of what we believe we've been hearing from the board in support of making sure playgrounds stay on BEX 5. But the funds are covered in the CEP fund currently.
And then if, let's say, the $1 million for this doesn't make it, are cut for the BEX 5, or the BEX 5 doesn't pass, which hopefully doesn't happen, we will then still be $1 million committed from the CEP funds.
Correct. The overall budget in CEP would go down $1 million.
My turn. First of all, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think one of the things that has not been stated, we stated it at introduction, is that our city and county partners have ponied up for some of our schools that are not funded by PTAs and PTOs. These are struggling schools. These are Title I schools. This is about race and equity, fresh air and exercise, which we can all agree is a good thing for our student learners. I was beyond astonished that in the past, playgrounds and playground improvements were not part of the BEX levies. Stunned and frankly disappointed, given what our values are in this beautiful city and for our beautiful students. I will be ever so happy to report back to our county and city partners that we're going to recognize this inequity and address it. Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Director Pinkham.
Aye.
Director Burke.
Aye.
Director DeWolf.
Aye.
Director Mack.
Aye.
Director Patu.
Aye.
Director Geary.
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
This
This is what
motion-
teamwork looks like. Thank you so much.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Number 8, Purchase of student and staff computers for new BEX 4 schools, BTA projects, K-3 class size reduction and enrollment growth capacity classrooms, opening summer 2018. This came before Ops March 8th for approval of this item would approve the purchase of student and staff computers for a total amount not to exceed $1.2 million for levy projects and the needed enrollment growth classrooms and K-3 class size reduction classrooms opening September 2018. Motion, please.
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to execute purchase orders through RFP number 06792 with Dell/Thornburg for a total amount not to exceed $1.2 million plus Washington State sales tax for fiscal year 2017-18 and to take any necessary actions to implement the purchase orders.
I second the motion.
Correct, and we added one paragraph concerning the...
Could you identify yourself for the
sorry.
record, please?
Yes,
Thank you so much.
Richard Best, Director of Capital Projects and Planning for Seattle Public Schools. We added one paragraph to the BAR to clarify that it is not a teacher or a student computer device ratio, but rather we provide computers on carts and we allow the buildings and the end users then to determine how they would like to utilize those computers for any given day. It's done with the input of the building principal who oversees that site. So